So behind me are the books that I sort of base my opinion, my views on this question. Maybe I'll just give you a quick tour. I'm sorry, it's not there. It's not really there. That's Orot from Rav Kook, Kol HaTor by Rav Hillel Mishklov, the student of the Vilna Gaon, Rav Menachem Kasher's Tkufa Gdola, which I read in yeshiva in Brooklyn and sort of turned me into a Zionist, even though okay. And then there's 3 books about the Talmidei Hagra in Eretz Yisrael and other books like that as well. There's Ema Banim Smecha, and there's a few other books. Well, over here you have Rabbi Mordechai Atiyah, who was a rabbi in Mexico and then in Brooklyn and then in Israel, who wrote a few books on these topics. So what I want to talk about is how we have to get to where we're getting to, but in order to talk about that, we have to know what are we getting to. So basically, I'm going to start off, and the Rambam is the first source. Oh, no, actually, I wanted to say something else. I know a lot of people were disappointed that they didn't see any miracles this week. And even though I'm going to explain to you that I didn't expect miracles, I felt the same way anyway, because we're living in very, very, very interesting times. But I want to point out something interesting. Why do you think 80% of the Jews never left Egypt, even though they saw 10 makot, one after another? You ever think about that? What happened to them? You could speak up if anybody has an idea. I didn't shut anybody up. Okay, it's good so far.
They were Yankee fans.
Because you're Yankee fans. What's the Yankee? I forgot already. I'm just joking. Anyway, one reason is I'm sure that in those days there was a Haaretz newspaper that explained that Dam was because of the volcanic ash that went into the water and the frogs had to go out, and everybody tried to explain away the miracles in scientific ways, and there were people who just didn't believe. And I think also if we didn't see miracles this week or in general, it's because we're just not looking and we don't see. I am sure that our children and grandchildren will be asked by their children and grandchildren, you were alive when this happened, when this miracle happened, and that miracle happened, etc. We just have to open our eyes and see that there are miracles happening all the time, but they happen in a natural fashion. And that's the main topic that we're going to talk about. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how the Rambam explains what Mashiach is. And the Rambam bases this on Gemara Ein Bein Olam Hazel Yemot HaMashiach Olam Hazel Limot HaMashiach Ela Shivud Malchiot Bilvad. There's no difference between this world and the world of Mashiach. We will talk a little later about the stages of Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, and then afterwards there's another stage that's Tchiyat HaMeitim, which we have no idea. The Rambam has no idea either exactly what goes on over there. But that's a lot of the things that we think associate with Mashiach have to do with the later stage when we're all spiritual beings or something like that, and not the stage of Mashiach, not even the stage of Mashiach ben David. So the Rambam, in the first source that I gave you, says that the King Mashiach will be a very strong king. All the nations will make peace with him, and they will serve him, and nothing will change in reality. Nothing in nature will change. There still will be poor people and rich people and strong people and weak people. But what it says in the Gemara, that you'll be able to pick up rolls, we just learned in Daf Yomi a few days ago, you can pick up rolls off the trees. It means that it'll be easy to make a living in the time of Mashiach, but still there'll be poor people and rich people. And there'll be no more wars, and Mashiach will rule for a long time, and people will live for a very long time as well also, but all this is within the parameters of science and logic and nature. That's what the Gemara says about it. Shmuel says this, and it in his Halacha Sefer as well, that Mashiach is basically David, Shlomo HaMelech's rule over again, where we're the most powerful nation in the world. And now if you find that hard to believe in this kind of stuff, it's very easy to believe, because while you weren't looking, Israel became the 8th most powerful nation in the world. We read that a few months ago, that we're the most 8th powerful nation in the world, nation that didn't exist 100 years ago, that 30, 40 years ago was poor and had nothing and knew nothing and did nothing. All of a sudden is the 8th most popular, strongest nation in the world. And who knows if certain things can happen, like what's happening now, or other things that may propel us forward into the number 1 spot We don't know. So it's something that's I find relatively easy to believe in these things because they're all things that do not go against common sense. They do not go against science. They do not go against logic. And maybe that's some of the message of what we're learning these days is that we have to go according to what our eyes see and what scientists say, etc. So that's the first thing is that Mashiach, what's going to be then is basically something that is we all can recognize as a regular word. I apologize if my hand looks strange. I had a very bad accident. A wine glass attacked me and cut my hand in 2 different places. So I should wave with my other hand. Anyway, hi Judah. How you doing? Oh, he said doesn't hear.
You're saying good. I hear you.
Are you still in Israel? You never went back.
Yeah, I'm here. I didn't go back. I didn't leave the ship.
Good, excellent. Okay, so now before we go to the main part, we'll also talk about when is all this going to happen. So the Gemara says in Masechet Avodah Zarah that the world's history is divided into 3 parts: 2,000 years of chaos, 2,000 years of Torah, 2,000 years of Mashiach, which means that from the year 4,000 till the year 6,000, Mashiach could come, and we've used up whatever we used up since then. I found a very interesting source in the footnote in the book called Yosef and Mashiach by Manito. I don't want to get into all those sources of all the books, but he quotes one of the Mekubalim of Sfard who said a very interesting thing. He says as follows, Shahaya Yadul Mekubalim, that the date of around 5,700, in other words, 1940, was the date that they knew 500 years ago that Mashiach would come around then. And this, I'm quoting one of these sources. A bit before the year 5,700, or a bit after the year 5,700, will come the end to our Golus, and so that the Jews could go back to Eretz Yisrael. And for the last 300 years, until the sixth millennium, the whole world can see that they're benefiting both spiritually and physically from this world. I quoted this to my mother-in-law a number of years ago. She complained that the grandchildren go to the mall to shop all the time, and I told her if Israeli kids go to shopping, that this is being Mekayim what was said years ago. This is the proof that the Jewish people were right all along, because the last 300 years, the times of Mashiach, is the time when we have to be rich and we have to spend our money and we have to show that we're doing well. And this is what he said. And this was said by Dan Yosef ben David ibn Yichya in the year 1537, I think it was. He said that the Geula would come around the year 1940. Okay. There are other sources. Well, I'll tell you the story over here. Oh, we don't. You may remember that in the year 2000, there was a lot of noise about the millennium arriving, but there was a lot of noise about another important year arriving that year also. In 1999, we went back to the States for a year. After living in Israel for 22 years, we went back to the States for a year. And before I left, someone showed me a Chesed Lavon that said, and he said, don't go to America this year. I said, why not? He said, it says over here that when the year 5,760 is reached, there are 5,760 kibbutz of water in a mikveh. When the mikveh overflows, the whole world will become dangerous except for Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael will be like Noach's Teva, safe, and everything else will become dangerous. And so I asked rabbis that I knew. They said, Shliach mitzvah, it's okay, go. So I left, and then I came back, and then I realized that there was a mistake made, that there was no, just like the evangelicals made a mistake with the millennium. They said the year 2000, but really it's the year 2001, because there's no year 0. So too, the dangerous year has to be 5,761. At the end of the summer of 5,761, which is the year 2001, I was in the States, and I ran into a neighbor of mine's daughter, and I told her, you better go back quickly because something bad is going to happen here very soon. And 2 weeks later, her uncle from Woodmere called me up and said, I'm going to tell the CIA that you knew about the Twin Towers in advance. I said, I didn't know anything. I just know that by the end of the year 57, 61, there had to be something bad had to happen, and indeed something happened. The year 57, 60s, there are whole books about why Mashiach should have come then, as there was in 1967 and other years. But there are 2 cycles that are measured as far as the progress of the redemption. Now, Arizal has a 60-year cycle, and that is every 60 years, and 57, 60 is the end of one of those cycles. And I don't know too much about that one, but I want to talk about the other cycle, which is the Gra cycle, which is mentioned in Kol HaTorah. And where are we holding? Is anybody looking at all at the sources? No. Nobody's looking. Okay. So I have to read it to you. There was a book written called Kol HaTorah by the students of the Vilna Gaon who came to live here in Eretz Yisrael. We'll quote a number of things from there. But he said as follows. He wrote in Kol HaTorah, they quoted the Vilna Gaon as saying as follows. The times of Mashiach started in the first hour of the morning of the 6th day. And in other words, in the year 5500, and every hour of the morning, the redemption progresses. Now, what does it mean? It means as follows. It says, Ki elef shanim beinecha, for Hashem, 1 day is equal to 1,000 years. And every year, every 1,000 years is divided up by 24. If you divide up 1,000 years by 24 hours in a day, you get 41.7 years is another hour. And there's a medrash that says that on the 6th day of creation, when Adam Rishon was created, at the stroke of dawn, in other words, at 6 o'clock in the morning, God started to build Adam Rishon, and there's stages of him being built until the soul was injected into him. Says the Vilna Gaon that the morning of the 6th day is parallel to the year 5500. Why? Because there's first 5 days, and the 6th day is 6,000. The first 500 years of the 6th millennium are nighttime, and therefore they don't count. But starting from year 5500, every 41.7 years, there is a progress to the Geula. And I'm going to read you now interesting things that happen on those years, more or less every year. The first year is 1781. The Hasidim came on. It was a mass wave of aliyah of Hasidim, of the Talmidim of the Gra, who came here in 1777 to prepare themselves for the year 1781. The next hour is 1823. The Vilna Gaon sent off his students to live in Eretz Yisrael in 1809, and there were waves of immigration between 1809 and 1821, 22, 23, around then, and that was the next hour. The next one after that is 1865, the first agricultural settlements in Eretz Yisrael. The next hour is 1907. It was when there was an alliance that year. I don't know exactly what happened, but there was an alliance made between Britain, France, and Russia against Turkey and Germany, which set the stage for Britain taking over the area 10 years later. The next hour falls out exactly in the spring of 1948, Yom Ha'atzmaut of 1948, when Israel became independent. The next hour falls out in the year 1990, when we had mass aliyah from Russia and Ethiopia. And the next one is 2031. We'll have to wait and see. That's what we have to wait for. In any case, we don't know when it's coming, and we're not going to figure out when it's coming, but we see that there are certain stages that happen over the years, and there are various people who predicted different times. Next, who is Mashiach? And there are different opinions as to what this is. This we're going to have to take a little time to talk about. The Gemara in Masechet Sukkah brings the picture of a funeral, and it says that that's the funeral of Mashiach ben Yosef, who will be killed. We have a tradition, and it's brought in the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. If you look at the sources there, you can see all the different sources for this. Orach Chaim HaKadosh, Kol HaTorah, it's brought by Rabbeinu Tzadok and many other places, that the Geula comes in 2 stages. For example, the Maral compares the 2 stages to the head and the body. The body is Mashiach ben Yosef, and the head is Mashiach ben David. Rav Kook and others talk about how Mashiach ben Yosef is the physical redemption and Mashiach ben David is the spiritual redemption. There's an interesting Gemara. I'm going to go ahead. There's an interesting Gemara that talks about how if Mashiach will come or not. And the Gemara, one of the commentaries from the Gemara, this is in Sanhedrin Tzaditet Omen Aleph. Rabbi Hillel Omer, Elam Mashiach liYisrael shekvar achlu b'meicheskiyahu. Rabbi Hillel says that the Jews will not have Mashiach anymore because we used up our rights to Mashiach in the time of Chizkiah. Now, the Gemara talks over there about the fact that Chizkiah should have been the Mashiach, except that he didn't say Hallel when he won the war. I don't want to go into the question of saying Hallel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, but that's one of the sources people bring, that Chizkiah should have been the Mashiach, except that he didn't say thank you to Hashem and praise Hashem for the victories in the war. Now, there's an amazing Abarbanel that asks the following question. How come the Gemara doesn't throw Rabbi Hillel out onto the garbage heap? He's saying there's no more Mashiach. How come the Gemara doesn't reject the opinion outright? It says something against other people argue, but it doesn't say that Rabbi Hillel is an apikairos, and how can he say such a thing? And he says, it's very interesting, he brings 10 aspects of redemption. The first one is that there'll be a Melech Mashiach similar to the way the Rambam said. The second one is that there'll be kibbutz galiyot in the gathering of the exiles. The third one is military success and revenge against our enemies. The fourth one is economic success in Eretz Yisrael. By the way, these stages are parallel to, if you read on Shabbat Tshuva, you all know that doing Tshuva means coming back to Eretz Yisrael, because it says so in Parshat Tshuva. We'll read the Torah. It says about coming back each to Eretz Yisrael, and over there in the Torah it says you'll come back and you'll win your wars. You'll come back and you'll be rich, or you're agriculturally there. And these basically follow those stages. And the fifth one is a rebirth of Torah. The sixth one is the return of Nevuah, etc., etc. One of them is the Beit HaMikdash, etc. The point the Barbanel makes is that, according to Rabbi Hillel, all these things will take place, but there won't be a specific human being who's the agent of these things. In other words, Mashiach is a process and not necessarily a human being. That's what the Barbanel says. The Vilna Gaon says something similar, but I have to qualify it and say that what he says really is that Mashiach ben Yosef may not be a person. There's a tradition that it says in the Gemara that I quoted before, that there will be a funeral for Mashiach ben Yosef. However, a number of different sources, whether it's the Vilna Gaon, whether it's the Rabbeinu Tzadok, whether it's or Chaim HaKadosh, and many others say that he does not have to die. Mashiach ben Yosef can live. And it would seem to me that and the Vilna Gaon says, how does he not die? Because he gives an example. He says, let's talk about a king who got very angry at his son and swore that he would throw this big rock on his son and kill him. Now, he swore that he would throw the big rock, and then he had charata. He didn't want to throw the rock on the other guy. So what did he do? He took the rock and broke it into little pieces and threw pieces of the rock until the entire rock was thrown on his son, but not in one shot, in little pieces. It says the Vilna Gaon in Torah that the Chevlei Mashiach, all the suffering, all the terror that we suffer, all the little pains that we have are basically a kapara, or taking off the curse that Mashiach ben Yosef has to die. The way I look at this argument of whether Mashiach ben Yosef has to die or not this is my own opinion, is that this is the argument between the Haredi world and the religious Zionist world. The religious Zionist world believes, and we'll look at one of the sources in a moment, that the present government, the present state, will morph into the messianic state. And there's a connection between this state and Mashiach, and the Haredim hold, no, this is not good enough to be any part of Mashiach. This is going to sort of disappear, to go away and die, and then we'll have the spiritual redemption. And that's just my own explanation. Everything else I'm saying is quoted from somebody else. So that's my own idea that I wanted to say. Okay, any questions? You're very quiet.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Who's that?
In terms of, first of all, thank you for having this. Second of all,
Who is speaking?
I had a question on the power, the Israel being the eighth most powerful. What?
Yeah.
So isn't it true that there's a midrash that says that when Yaakov is up, Esav is down, and that in some ways America is in a down?
I don't know if America is Esav, number one. Let's not rush to call America Esav, as was said by the Kotel 2 days ago when David Friedman was one of the 10 people who blessed us at the Birkat Kohanim. Rabbi Rabinovich said the representative of the Malchut Shel Chesed. I'm going to get to that idea about America towards the end also. But first of all, you're asking a good question. It does say that throughout history, it says when Tzor and Yushalayim, when Esav is up, we're down. However, you should know that I saw sources, and I don't remember where they are, that Esav does tshuva in the end of days. In other words, that the brothers get together also. So, okay. Now, let us talk about too many papers. 1 second. 1 second.
See, this
Okay.
is not.
Oh, they removed our limit from Zoom. Look at that. Oh, I love it. Thank you. Okay. There's a pasuk in Micha that says as follows: "Ata migdal eder, ofel bat Zion, adecha teate, uva memshala rishona mamlechet levat Yerushalayim." This is a pasuk that talks about Migdal Eder. Migdal Eder is right over here, south of Efrat. A very interesting place. When my Rosh Hashiva of Tuvi Goldstein came to visit me in my house in Efrat in the summer of '83, before there were streets here or anything else, he asked me why did I move to such a. Then it was a God-forsaken place. I took him to my backyard and I showed him the next hill. I said, "That's the Migdal Eder," and the Targum Yosef ben Uziel says that that's where Mashiach will reveal himself in the end of days. And I figured I want to be on site when it happens. But that's not what I want to talk about now. I want to read you what the Malbim says because this is like a mind-blowing Malbim. So the Malbim says as follows. He says, "Shagaluyot yatchilu kabetz," when the exiles begin returning home, the Galut Yehuda Binyamin and the tribes of Yehuda and Binyamin, Shehem Bat Zion. Why? Because they were the ones who were exiled from Zion by the Churban of the second Beit HaMikdash. So they're the ones, the Bat Zion, the ones who left Zion, they're coming back. Listen to what the Malbim says. Tavo Memshala Ktana. Now, I don't know any better way of describing our government, although I didn't hear the 8:30 announcement by Benny Gantz, so maybe it became a Memshala Gdola, but probably not. Tavo Memshala Ktana, sheyeh lahem ktsat memshala v'hanhaga kamo shehayu Yisrael b'yomim harishonim lifnei Moloch melech b'nei Yisrael shehaya lem shoftim manhigim otam. Before Mashiach comes, the first stage will be a small government, like the shoftim who we had before Shaul and David became kings. Now, you may remember that the Shoftim, not all of them were the biggest Talmidei Chachamim and Tzaddikim when they were drafted to their positions. Many of them were drafted because they were good thieves or whatever it was. I'm sure they became Tzaddikim afterwards. But the point is that the rulers that we had before Shaul, even Shaul wasn't the greatest of kings. But the ones we had before, not all of them were on this level of David and Melch, etc. And it was slowly a process until we built up the government. And then he says as follows: "V'achakach tavo ma'amelechet lebat Yerushalayim yile malchut kavua shu malchut Beit David shachakach yimloch hamelch Mashiach b'mamlecha kavua." Afterwards, there'll be a permanent rule of Mashiach ben David. And this is what's in Yechai. He brings all kinds of sources. And in the beginning, lo yirak b'madregat shofet v'yitaleh la'at la'ad ad sheyeshem hamelucha. In other words, the process of getting from here to there, from the present way we are now, to what's going to be is a process of evolution. And the state will evolve into what, not a state, the Jewish community in Israel will evolve into the Messianic kingdom. So that is how we're getting from here to there. Now, what do we have to do to move this process along? Okay, too many pages. 1 second, please. Any other questions? Okay, so
Hi, Yossi.
yeah,
I just want to say that the Bagats and the Shoftim today are also trying with proactive judicial activism, trying to take over. I don't know if the Malbim had that in mind.
the Shoftim, I see.
Yes.
That's why he called it Mebshala Ktana, because it was the Shoftim. Okay.
Oh,
Shkoyach. Anyway, so we'll go back now to the Kol HaTorah, because he told his students to go live in Israel, and he told them to live here because it would be safe here at a certain point in time. We'll talk about that soon. But first, he told them what they have to do, and they have to come back. And the whole book is full of these things, but I just want to sum up, because in the 6th chapter, he sums up the things that have to be done. He says, Ikare avodat atchalta, the main job of the first stage of the redemption, Tana'eha v'faneha, its conditions and the way we do it, Hakol kamo bimei bayit sheni, like when we came back to the second temple, biyudah the Mashiach ben Yosef, in other words, the physical redemption, Ketz HaMegula, and he lists 7 things that have to be done. Kibbutz Galiyot, we have to gather in the exiles. Binyan Yerushalayim, we have to build up Yerushalayim. Biur Ruach HaTumah Min Haaretz, Aidei Nitiyat Admat HaKodesh, we have to get rid of the tumah in the land by planting Jewish plants in the land. Sending up people, what he calls Anshe Amanah. These are groups of people who learn Kabbalah, because the Zohar says that the gates of knowledge will open up before Mashiach comes, and that's about the Kabbalah and the Zohar. And then Torah, Mitzion, we have the building up of Torah, Milchama Ba'amalek, fighting our enemies. And the last one, interesting one, if I just noticed this today, is called Refuat Tzion, the healing of Zion, whatever that means. Okay. So anyway, the point being is that the Vilna Gaon told his students, of course you have to daven with a minyan when you can. And of course you have to do all the mitzvahs. And of course you should say Tehillim. And of course you should believe in Hashem's miracles, etc. However, what you have to do are the practical things of gathering the exiles, of building Yerushalayim, planting the land, all the things that we associate with, I don't want to use the word Zionist, the Zionist movement, but the idea of settling the land and doing all these things. These are the things that the Vilna Gaon told his students to do before they came. When they came to Eretz Yisrael. This was the main thing that they had to do, because, and maybe I should explain this, the Rambam says in Igeret Teiman that a person who thinks that Mashiach is going to come on a horse and save him from where he is Choteo Machti et Rabim. You can't believe that these things are going to happen miraculously. That's what the Rambam says over there. Of course, the question is, what does a miracle mean? But he meant, if you sit and wait for these things and you don't do anything, it's a problem. Let me bring you another source that I found just recently. I don't know the person. There's a book called Gulat Yisrael by Rav Avram Yelin, who lived at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. And he wrote a whole book about how the return to Eretz Yisrael would be in a natural process. And he says as follows, with the permission of the governments of the world, and the Jews will settle on their own in the land of Israel, like they did in the time of Bayit Sheni. And what's very interesting here, and I sent you all the sources, so you can look it up afterwards. He brings the Tosfot Yom Tov that clearly claims that Mashiach will come after the Beit HaMikdash is built. You believe that the Mashiach, that the Beit HaMikdash will be built before Mashiach comes? Again, it's a question of Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, what stage it is. But it's an amazing thing because the Rambam himself says that's not the case. The Rambam says that one of the proofs of a potential Mashiach and Hilchot Malachim is that he succeeds in building the Beit HaMikdash. However, the Tosfot Yontov brings a solid proof that the Beit HaMikdash will be built before, a halachic proof, will be built before a Mashiach comes. This fits, by the way, the famous medrash that's been bandied around for years. Every time there's a trouble between Iran and her Arab neighbors, there's this medrash that says about how the king of Arabia will go to the king of Aram, and there'll be a war between the Persians and the Arabs. The whole world will be riled up. At the end of that medrash, it says, and the Mashiach will stand on the roof of the Beit HaMikdash and declare everything that happened, happened only for you. So we see that even in that medrash, that the idea is that the Beit HaMikdash exists before Mashiach comes. So in other words, a lot of this stuff has to happen by our efforts. Now, I must make clear that when it comes to the Temple Mount, there are two opinions about this. Personally, I have never gone on the Temple Mount because I spent many years in Yeshivat Ateret Koni with Rav Shlomo Aviner, and he is one of the students of Rav Tzvi Yehuda Kook, who is adamant that the world, as far as what we call proactive Zionism, proactive settling the land, trying to push Mashiach ahead, is divided up into two places. There's the whole world where we have to push ahead the building of Eretz Yisrael by our physical means, and then there's the wall around the Temple Mount. That wall is the Chomah that's mentioned in Ketubot. It says Lo Yalu B'Chomah, that the Satmar say you're not allowed to go on Aliyah by force. Says these people claim. I looked for the Medrash. I looked for the Parish of the Vilna Gaon on Shir HaShirim, and I didn't find it. But they say that he explains that the idea that one cannot push the Geula ahead by physical means only applies to the Temple Mount. In other words, when it comes to settling around the old city, around the old Temple Mount, we have to buy, we have to do. But when it comes to the Temple Mount, we're all Satmar Hasidim. We all sit and wait for something miraculous to happen over there. That is one opinion among people today. There are, of course, all those people who do go on Har HaBayit and do try to push ahead. Some of them are even what we call Haredi completely, who push ahead the idea of settling on the Temple Mount and building on the Temple Mount, building a shul, building a mizbeach, bringing Korban Pesach. We have to push these things ahead. This is an unclear thing, that there are differences of opinion, so I don't want to go there. But otherwise, it's up to us to push the agenda ahead by physical means. The Talmidim of the Gra explained this by there's Gemara in Tanit that says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo avo b'Yushalayim shel mala ad she'avo l'Yushalayim shel mata. And the Medrash version of this says, until you go into Yerushalayim shel mata. And Hashem says, I am not going to redeem you. I'm not going to go to my place in Yerushalayim shel mala until first you build up Yerushalayim, first you settle in Yerushalayim. The Gemara in Brachot says, Ein chavush matir atzmo b'beit asurim. Somebody who's in jail can't let himself out of jail. And he has to call somebody else with the key to let him out. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is golus because of us, and it's up to us to do what we have to do to let him out. Just to understand this idea, we all say a lie every day, and I hope you're saying this lie because it's a mitzvah to eat matzah every day, according to the Vilna Gaon. The lie that we say every day is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Now, when we say Borei Pri Adama, it's not a lie; it makes sense. When we say other brachas, it makes sense. When we say Hashem, you're the one who takes bread out of the ground. We all know from the Sechet Shabbat that the 39 malachot, that bread, in order to make bread, you have to plow the land, you have to plant the land, you have to grow the wheat, you have to cut the wheat, you have to grind the wheat kernels, you have to make dough. There's nothing more, how do you say that? But we're more input of mankind than making bread. And nevertheless, we say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. You take out why? Because Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't do things on his own in general. He has servants here. We are the fingers of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and everything that gets done in this world, we have to do. We can't wait for him to do it. We have to do it ourselves. That's why we say Hamotzi, even though it's something, bread is made by man completely, but we're Hashem's hands on this world, and everything that we've done on this world has to be done by us, not to wait for somebody else to do it. A little about the end game. And the Vilna Gaon was very concerned about the pasuk that says Ani Hashem be'ito achishena. The Gemara says that the end game, there are two possible ways that this story ends. One is Jews do tshuva and deserve to be redeemed, and therefore Mashiach comes and possibly with miraculous miracle, not just the kind of miracles we have every day. And if not, if it comes be'ito, it means that it's a dor shekulo chayav. With that, there's no choice, but it's the end of time, the end of history. It has to happen, and therefore it happens, even though we may not deserve it. The Vilna Gaon was very concerned that if we would have to wait for the long-term one for be'ito in the time, at the appointed time, at the end of time, that it would be very, very painful and accompanied by lots and lots and lots of Chevlei Mashiach. And he was hoping that there's a third alternative, not only be'ito, and not only achishena, that Hashem will make it come quickly if we do tshuva, but he says, he used to say to his students, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we can't take a pasuk out of its simple pshat. The simple pshat in the pasuk is be'ito achishenu. Even it comes at the end game, there are ways to speed it up. And this was very important, that all the things that he told the students to do down through the years, as far as planting the land, building a Yerushalayim, etc., all that would speed along the redemption. Okay. Now we're going to come to a very touchy topic. So did I skip something? Oh, I'm going to come to two touchy topics. First of all, a lot of people are worried that right now, for example, we can't fly, and a lot of people are worried that someday, somehow, if they want to come to live in Eretz Yisrael, they won't be able to. Now, this is not a strange idea, but this is a very familiar idea. I mentioned before that I went to the States at the end of the summer in 2001. And indeed, how do I explain this? We had a friend here in Efrat who had to go back to live in the United States back in the 1990s. And he had a Rav here in Eretz Yisrael who was a Makubal, and he told him, listen, my family is making me go back. I have no choice, Parnasa, whatever it was. I have to go back. What's going to be? And the rabbi told him, make sure you have a house here that's furnished in Eretz Yisrael. Make sure your passports are all updated. And I'm going to call you one day, and I'm going to tell you, come now. When I call you on that day, do not wait. Take your kids out of school in the middle of the school day and come right away. This was and this I heard years and years ago. And I thought to myself, every time I go to work, I'm going to get stuck there with everybody else. And then it happened to me in the year 2001. And if you read the article that I sent around, I wrote a little about this. The year 2001, they stopped flying. And we couldn't get back for a couple of days. And we were scared.
Yeah.
Now, is there a source that not all the Jews will be able to come back to Eretz Yisrael when the time comes? We know that Mordechai ben David has a song, no Jew will be left behind. But the Gemara begs to differ with that song. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Kuf Yud Aleph Amid Aleph. The Gemara on Kuf Yud Amid Bet starts. There's a mission about whether or not the 10 tribes will come back or not, and there's a whole discussion over there about whether or not the Jews of the world will be able to come back to Mashiach, and Mashiach will accept them and let them come back. The pasuk is brought by Shlishit Yavo Ba'esh, that a third will come back, and there's a long Rashi over there. Look it up over there. It took me a long time to understand what he's saying, but basically, it's referring to 1/3 of the world will get destroyed, or 1/3 of the students of the descendants of Noah, 1/3 of one of the sons of Shem, the son of Noah. The point is, Rashi quite clearly speaks about the fact that many of the Jews will not make it back to Eretz Yisrael when the time comes. And there's an argument in the Gemara there between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Reish Lakish says is always the pessimist, and at the end he brings the pasuk, I will take out one from a family and two from a town. In other words, very, very few people will go back. And Reish Lakish says, like in the time of Yetziat Mitzrayim. We said before, 80% didn't make it out. 20% did come out. But how many got to Eretz Yisrael out of all the Jews? 2 people, right? Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, Kalev from the tribe of Yehuda, and Yoshua from the tribe of Ephraim. And right, am I right, Ephraim? And those two, only 2 people out of all those people came to Eretz Yisrael. And Rabbi Reish Lakish says 1 from a family and 2 will be saved, and that's the very, very small percentage. Rabbi Yochanan says, nah, Kadosh Baruch Hu will never let such a thing happen. But he talks more about a number based on the third. It's a very complicated sugi over there, but basically it's a scary thing that it's possible that the people will not come back. Now, this question is brought up by a number of people, including Rav Teichtel in Rabbanim Smecha, Rav Atiyah in his books on this topic. Rav Atiyah basically says, it says, Uvahu ovdim mi'eretz Ashur ve'nidachim me'eretz Mitzrayim. The Jews who are lost and oppressed will be saved almost miraculously and will be brought back to the land of Israel. But what about the Jews, he asks, who live 5 minutes from Kennedy Airport, a nice house with 2 cars and a taxi service, and money to come? What about the Jews who could come on their own if they wanted to, and they don't come? And here we have a slight difference of opinion between Rav Teichtel and Rav Atiyah. Rav Atiyah, in the introduction to his last introduction to his book, had seen Ema Ban Smeich already. In any case, Rav Atiyah says, sorry, buddies, if you don't come now, it's going to be bad news. And he says that's what the Vilna Gaon was telling the students. It says, Ki b'Yushalayim, Ki b'Tzion Yisham Tia Pleitah, that the Jews will be saved in Eretz Yisrael. And he was very, very, very worried that his students would not make it to Eretz Yisrael in time when it would be safe. Rav Teichtel has a more sweeter approach. He says that and I'll explain to you what's going on over here. I didn't explain it. There are many sources about Melchemet Gog and Magog. I'm not going about the fact that there's one source that says that it's a plague. Let's leave that. There's one source that says that there's many sources that say that the purpose of Melchemet Gog and Magog is for the nations of the world to beat up each other and thereby punishing those nations that persecuted the Jews throughout the years. There are many sources, some of them are your sources that I sent you, that say that he wants us to mute the mics. It's making a lot of noise. So I'm going to mute you. We didn't do it till now, but if you want to say something, press your space bar. I muted me, not you. Okay. 1 second here. Mute. I'm muting everybody, but you can talk if you press your space bar. Okay. So the purpose of Melchemet Gog and Magog is to punish those nations that did bad things to the Jews. And so Rav Teichtel and Rav Atiyah ask, what happens to the Jews who live in the countries that need to be punished? And that's what Rav Atiyah is worried about. On the other hand, Rav Teichtel says that he wrote his book, Ema Ban Smecha, was found after the Holocaust. He was a Satmar Dayan who changed his opinions about Eretz Yisrael during the years of the Holocaust. he writes a list of things that people can do to connect up to Eretz Yisrael and therefore be saved from the Chevlei Mashiach. One of them is to own an apartment in Eretz Yisrael. One of them is to support those organizations that settle Eretz Yisrael. But he says, when he talks about this, he says, but there's a Malchut Shel Chesed, it's called the United States of America. And he says, because of all the generosity to the Jewish people from that country, that America will be not punished and the Jews there will not be punished. So that's a good thing to look forward to, hopefully. But I still say to all of you, get out while the getting is good, because you never know what the next time that we won't be able to fly. Like I wrote in that article about we had volcanic ash, and that volcano erupted again today, I think, but not so strongly. There's all kinds of reasons things could happen. Chas v'chalil, that we won't be able to fly, we won't be able to come here. While we're here, we're stuck in our houses. It's not so bad. It's not so bad, Baruch Hashem. Okay. I want to talk a little about and this probably be the last thing we'll talk about. I want to talk a little about the idea of Daas Torah. I mentioned many sources that say that one has to act proactively to bring the geula. We have to settle the land, etc. But we know that there are many Rabbanim who say the chinuch in Eretz Yisrael is no good, and the government is not religious, and we have to wait for Mashiach to come and save us, as opposed to what the Rambam says, and other such things. How do we relate to what's called Daas Torah on these issues? So I just want to read you a couple of sources. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, in the Egypyt Mashiach chutzpah yaskeh v'yokar yamir, the various signs of Mashiach coming, the prices will go up, there'll be lots of grapes, but the wine will be expensive, and the government will become a minus, a government that doesn't believe in Hashem, and nobody gives anybody Musar anymore. Beit Avad Yiznut, the yeshivas become a place where unfortunately Znus happens. Galil Yecharev, and the northern part of Israel, maybe that's the southern Lebanon, I don't know, will be destroyed. Gavlan Yishom, and they say it's the Golan, it will be empty. Anshe Agvul Yisovavenu Meir Leir, and the people of the border will go from one town to another. We saw this after the explosion for Gush Katif, and the people from the border went from town to town and couldn't find a place to stay. No one forgave them. But that's not what I want to talk about now. The Chokhmat Sofrim Tisrach, the knowledge of the Talmidei Chachamim will rot, will not be correct. The Yirei Chet Yimasu, and people will be disgusted with the Yirei Shemayim, and the truth will be gone. This is what it says in the Gemara. Now, many people refer to these questions. When we talk about Daas Torah of today, the only thing we can do is go back 100 years and look what Rabbanim said 100 years ago, or go back 2,000 years and say like what the Gemara says over here. But I'm going to quote you a couple of things. This is from an article that I wrote many years ago, and I never published because I think people would get too angry at me. I'm not quoting all of it. But these are a few quotes from Rabbanim from about 100 years ago. Rav Eliyahu Gutmacher. The great importance of the settlement movement is apparent from the fact that the Klipa, which is the forces of evil, overpowers even the greatest tzaddikim, convincing them to oppose this good. For the entire power of the Klipa depends on the Golus, and this power will be nullified by the end of the Golus. And therefore, the forces of evil convince even the greatest tzaddikim to speak against settling the land. Rav Akiva Yosef Schlesinger, one who disparages Yeshiva Aris because of the involvement of sinners and undesirable elements. We're talking about now in the beginning of the 20th century because there were the non-religious people involved in it. Whoever says that you should not be part of it is the spiritual patron of Edom, whose name is known. That's not Voldemort, I'm sorry, Samael, the name we don't mention. And basically he says anybody who uses that excuse to not to settle Eretz Yisrael is from the Sitra Achar, from the forces of evil. The Chassam Sofer writes, among the students of Torah and even rabbis, distance your path from anyone who does not speak truth in his heart, who does not employ integrity and righteousness as his tools. The Tzanzer Rebbe, Chaim Alvestam, it says in the Hashmotas in Divrei Chaim. What is the Erev Rav? It is clearly that most of the rabbis, pious individuals, and laymen, this is 1850, okay? Most of the rabbis, pious individuals, and laymen of this generation are from the Erev Rav, due to our many sins, and they wish to dominate the community. All of their deeds are performed for their own sake, to accrue honor and wealth. Therefore, one should not associate with them, but only with those who serve Hashem sincerely and make sacrifices in His name, not any selfish benefit. I don't want to go on because I'm not saying these things. These are saying by great Rabbanim that those people who speak about building up Eretz Yisrael, even if they're great Rabbanim, it could be all kinds of influences that influence them in an incorrect fashion. But the strongest indictment of this situation is from the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, who says as follows. Let me read the English for you. English. I don't have the English here. Okay. So he says as follows. He says, it says, Ki amuch achicha, when your brother becomes poor, and then uba hagoel akarov elav, the person who will redeem him, it's supposed to be a relative, is supposed to come and redeem the land and save him from being poor. So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, every time he says the word remez, my ears perk up because he says something very interesting to say. So he says this whole chapter about redeeming lands of private people is a mashal, a parable for the people. Question? Somebody pressed their space bar. Okay.
I'm doing Zoom. It's Rabbi Baumer.
Thank you for the smicha.
Have a good sleep time.
Esther, I think you're making a lot of noise. Okay. So he says as follows, that the Torah is telling us, Ki gulatahu biyad tzaddik, the geula should be in the hands of the rabbis of the tzaddikim, asher yikarov l'Hashem, alvar omer b'krovei hakadesh, hu yigal mimkar achiv, ki adon baruch hu kara tzaddikim ach. Naftali Bennett wasn't the first person to call people ach. Hashem calls tzaddikim my brothers, and he says basically that the tzaddikim should be the goel, the karov should be the goel, the tzaddik should be the goel, the rabbis should be the ones who lead the battle for Eretz Yisrael. But he says it's not going to happen that way. He says when the hearts of just regular people will wake up, and the Omar Lem Hatov lechem ki teshvu chutz golim mi'al shulchan avichem. How could it be good to sit exiled from your father's table, and how can life be sweet for you without his exalted company? When you used to sit at his table, sit around the table, sit around Hashem's table in Eretz Yisrael. And they will leave behind all the imaginary pleasures of this world, and they will come, and this is how Hashem will redeem His land. And he says, if it wasn't clear what he was saying until now, he ends it off by saying, "Va'al zeh atidin litain et adin kol adonai haaretz gedolei Yisrael umeihem yavakesh Hashem elbon habayit ha'aluv." And for this, in the future, all the great the great Adonai Haaretz will have to give a din and cheshbon, and they will have to pay for the fact that God's house was embarrassed. So we see many different sources that say that when it comes to this time in history, we can't rely on what all the rabbis say, and we have to go with the ones who are supporting the building up of Eretz Yisrael. Are there any questions? No questions. Okay. Anybody have a question? You have to press your space bar if you have any questions. In any case, I just want to thank everyone.
Yossi.
What?
Unmute your computer.
Who?
Yossi,
Yes.
Judah,
Oh, Judah wants to talk.
unmute your computer.
Judah had my cousin.
I was
Judah,
saying that,
Judy, you have a question?
yes, we are related. Yeah, like I'm saying how like America does tshuva like Esav.
I don't want to start saying
America's
who's
the
Esav and who's not Esav. We don't know who Esav is. The Rambam says there is no Amalek anymore, so let's leave it at that. Besides, all our relatives, including your parents, are in America still, right? Even though they own an apartment here. Let's have Rahmanis on them, okay?
yeah.
Okay, let's leave that. Okay? I think really that people don't know that the biggest thing that that Donald Trump did, and I don't want to get into politics or even defend him in any way, but the fact that he tied America to Yerushalayim and to Eretz Yisrael now may be a big schus when the time comes that America shouldn't be Esav. In Yirtzeh Hashem, it should be Malchus Shel Chesed, and everybody should come there from there quietly and nicely and peacefully. But we don't know what will be, and I would say get here before it's sooner rather than later. Any questions? No? Everything's
Yossi,
clear? So, look, understand that,
Yossi,
yes.
you mentioned that we are the fingers of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. The sages Doresh that on Mikdash Hashem Konenu Yadecha, that we are the fingers of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, among other things, to build Beit HaMikdash, but certainly to settle the land and to move forward the process of Geula to the best of our abilities.
Right, so I mentioned before that there are two opinions on that, but there are people who say that all the big things, all the important things are both a promise and a command. In other words, Mikdash Hashem Kananu Yadecha, Hashem builds the Mikdash. By the way, it was said at the time there was no Beit HaMikdash, right? It was said before the Mishkan was built even, that sentence, right? But all the great things in Jewish life are both a promise and a commandment. A promise that Hashem will make sure it happens, but a commandment that we have to do it. And that's why the Rambam brings the nitty-gritty halachas of building the Beit HaMikdash and the korbanot and everything. It's all there in his halacha sefer, because in the end, as you said, we are Hashem's fingers and we have to do our building. Any other questions? Mr. Friedman, are you from LA? Mr. Friedman, where do you live? I don't know you. He doesn't answer.
I'm your neighbor in Deco.
You live in the Deco. Ah, okay. I know an Andrew Friedman from LA. Well, that's very nice. Okay.
Avi. My computer says Andrew, but I've been Avi for 30 years.
Avi Friedman. Ah, okay. Now I got it. Very good. Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Achi.
Yes, I just want to know why are you preaching to the converted?
Because I had 20 people signed up from America for this.
Okay. Then it's all right.
No. I'll tell you, Achi. I'll tell you also. I'm very
glad to have heard this, especially since my concern was that it was going to be a bunch of Hasidic Torah, and it's not, and it wasn't. Okay. But on the other hand, I'm wondering how many people who are sitting here in this, I know in front of me, are the ones who have apparently heard the call already.
I'll tell you, the call, and almost all of us are here, so that's not the issue. The issue is that personally, I'm a person of weak faith. And if I have to believe in a Mashiach that's going to come down and turn the whole world upside down, and come and you know the miracles take place like the days of Mitzrayim, it's hard for me to believe in that. Now, I have no problem believing that at some future time, I don't know when, thousands of years from now, that men will become spiritual beings, energy beings. I'm a science fiction fan, so I can picture these kind of things. But when I look at today and I want to know what's going to be tomorrow, it makes me understand and calm that on one hand, we're on a certain path. And this is why the Vilna Gaon gave his Torah to his students to know that even though there'd be a lot of opposition to what they were doing, a lot of difficulties, but they should know they're on the right path. As I once saw in one of the abandoned houses in Hebron, somebody wrote graffiti on the stairwell. It says, if you're walking up the steps, it says, if you're breathing hard, it means you're going up. Okay, that's what it says over there. So people have to know that with the challenges that we have today, like we have right now, an interesting challenge, and other challenges to Eretz Yisrael and Gush Katif and other kinds of things, if we know that this is something that is happening before our eyes and that the end game is something that we can understand even, the end game is understanding, and we have to get from place number 8 to place number 1 as far as how powerful we are in the world. And we have to have more peace with countries, not just with Jordan and Egypt, but in Saudi Arabia, but with the whole world. It makes it much more easier for me to believe it. And also, I don't get nervous when there are bumps in the road along the way. So, I know a lot of people, I bought a lot of candles because I don't know, I was afraid who knows what's going to happen. Right this week and next week. And I don't know if this is going to end before a war breaks out between China and America, because it looks to me that this was biological warfare, and who knows what's going to happen afterwards. One thing after another, it says that the times of Mashiach, the one sorrow chases the other before one finishes, the next one comes. We don't know what's going to be. But when you know that all the things that we're experiencing are laid out, are logical, are based on common sense and science and our history, and you don't have to think of mystical things. It makes life a little simple. I don't negate mystical things. I personally prepared Rav Batsri's antidote to Corona, and I took it just in case. You never know. Okay, so I'm not saying anything against mystical things. But what I'm saying is, if we see the way politics goes, things goes. For example, the Maharal says that before every appearance of something, there's a lack of that thing. And before the great leader comes, there's a lack of leadership. So when you finish now, go to the news and watch the lack of leadership that you see in our country and the world in general. When you see all these things, you feel calm. That doesn't make you nervous. There's a plague out there. It's terrible. People are dying and whatever. But still, everything happens for a good reason, and we see, if you look at the miracles, this is what we started off with when we spoke about seeing the miracles and the people in Egypt who imagined away all those miracles. They imagined away the miracles of every single plague that came on Egypt. They said it was a scientist, it was the asteroid, it was the volcanoes. They made it. They refused to see the miracles. We just have to look at the miracles and what we I know, but personally, I keep a makli avarti at the Arden as I came into this country with $8,000 in my pocket and one kid and nothing. And now, Baruch Hashem, I have a big house and it's empty, just me and my wife in this very big house, and we have kids living all around. Baruch Hashem, they all have their own houses, almost all of them. Miracles. You have to open your eyes and look that everything is a miracle. And that you know that you're on this path, and things don't bother you so much, and it calms you down.